Hello everyone. So there's one more example that I wanted to show you. So this is asking us to solve the linear system by transforming the augmented matrix to reduced echelon form. So the augmented matrix I wrote here as we start with that, but let's look at something here before we dig into the process. So this is a 4 by 5 matrix because 4 rows and 5 columns. The last column, the column number 5, this is for the constants on the right side of the equation, these constants, and this 4 by 4 matrix, which is the matrix of the coefficients. This, when reduced in echelon form, reduced echelon form, it will look like 1 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 1 0. Sorry, I'm going down and down. 1 0 and then 0 0 0 1. So if you notice on the diagonal, we have all ones and the rest of the entries everywhere else are 0. Now if you keep the augmented part with it, so if you keep the numbers over here, they will be, we don't know what they will be. This is what you are going to calculate while we are doing the reduction. So basically this is what our goal is, that we have to get our coefficient matrix into this form. This is actually later on you'll study matrices. This is called identity matrix. Okay. So our goal is to get there. So we start by writing our augmented matrix. Now the first step is to make the first entry in the first row and the first column a 1. Now here it is already a 1, so we have to do one less step. If it is not a 1 in the first position, then you have to swap the rows, or maybe multiply the row by the reciprocal of the number which you have here to get a 1. Okay, so once we have a 1 there, this actually becomes what we call the pivot element, or this is the pivot position, this is the pivot element, pivot number, whatever you call it. So now we will use this pivot number, or the to make the numbers below it to be 0. So to get this 2, this -1, and this 1, we have to get zeros here. How do we do that? But we have to use the row operations. What are the row operations I am using here? I wrote them over here. So this is important that you write down the row operations in whatever language you want to write them. This is kind of a mathematical language, easily written using these symbols. What is R1? Well, R1 is the first row, R2 will be the second row, big R2, big R3, and big R4. These are our 4 rows, and now we can perform the row operations on these rows. So in order to have this number as a 0, I have to multiply the first row by -2 and add into the second row. So this is how I wrote it here, -2 R1 plus R2. Now remember the order of the how the numbers will be calculated. So first we multiply the first row by -2, and so this will be the multiple of the first row. We are going to add it in the second row. So this will make changes only in the second row. First row will stay as it is. So you will not, in the next step, you will not write the first row by multiplying with -2, but only you'll copy it as it is. So how do you do the calculation then? Well, you can do it in your head, or you can go take a scrap paper, go on a side, and then do that. Multiply the first row by -2, you get -2, 2, 4, -2, and then you will add the second row. So write the second row as it is below it, and then just add. So you get 0, 1, 1, 0, -6. So you bring it down and write it in here in the second row, which I have here in this matrix. So those are the same. Okay. What about the 0 and the third place in the first column, making this a 0? To make this a 0, what do? I will multiply the first row by -1 and then add into the fourth row. So here I wrote that operation, -r1 plus r4. So it gave me 0, 2, 1, 1 and 1. How? Well, you can check it by going on a scrap paper and multiplying the first row by -1 and adding to the fourth row, you get that. Okay. So once we are done with this step, so now notice here this was our pivot, and we use this to make the entries under the pivot or rest of the entries in the column 0. So when we go to the next step, in the next step the quantity that will be pivot will be the first and non-zero entry in the second row. And what is that? That is a 1, so we don't have to worry about it. It's already a 1, so we are good. We have our pivot there. Now we have to decide how to use the pivot. Okay. So our pivot is over here now. This is the pivot, and now I'm going to use the pivot. Sorry, over here. So we have to use the pivot to make the entry 0. So this will be our pivot now. So I have to make the entries above and below it 0. So what the operations I can do, I wrote them here in the next step down here, putting the arrow. If you have space, put the arrow over there, and then just come down and write this matrix and then go on. So I'm going to add the second row in the first row to make the second entry in the first row 0. Now these will stay as what we have here. Okay, you can even do the calculation, or you can just copy them down. They are not going to change. What else is not going to change? The second row is not going to change. So you can just bring down and rewrite the second row as it is, and then work on the rest of the rows. So I have to make the entry above, which means this to be 0, and this and these. This is my goal. So in order to make this a 0, I have to multiply by -1, the second row by -1, and add. Sorry, we don't have it because there is a -1 here. So I just need to add the second row in the first row. This is what I wrote, r2 plus r1. Now I'm not going to write r1 plus r2. r1 plus r2 will mean that I'm adding the first row in the second. If second is changing, we don't want the second to change, because we wanted a 0 here and we have a 0, and we wanted a 1 here, we have a 1 here. If I add the first row in the second row, it will become 1 0 and then something something, which is what we do not want. So we'll use the second to add in first. So 1 plus 0 is 0. So first you can check the 0 plus 1 is 1, which is this one. Then 1 plus -1 is 0. Then 1 minus 2 is -1. Then we have 0 plus 1, which is 1. -6 plus 0, -6. Now third and the fourth row. So for making it to 0 in the third row, second column, I have to multiply the second row by -1 and add into the third row. So this is what I have there. And to make the fourth entry or the second entry in the fourth row and the second column, we have to multiply the second row by -2 and add in fourth row, and I did write the numbers here. So what is not changing is the second row. So we can just copy down the second row as it is: 0, 1, 1, 0, -6, and then we have to work the number. So this, so -1 plus 1 is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 0, right? 1 plus 1, so this one, -2 plus 1 will be -1. Okay, we have -1, then we have 0 plus 1, which is 1, and 0 minus 6, which is -6. Okay, and then we have the third row will be, so we multiply this by -1, so -1 plus 1 is 0, -1 into 1 is -1, -1 plus -1 is -2, then we have -1 into 0 is just 0, plus 4 is 4, and then -1 into -6 is 6, 6 plus 2 is 8, so I have the 8 here. And in the same way, the last row, so 0, -2 into 0, 0 plus 0, 0, so we have 0 here. Now we have -2 into 1 plus 2, that will give me 0, and then -2 into 1 is -2, plus 1 will give me -1, and then -1 into 0 is 0, and plus 1 is just 1. Now -1 into 6, -6 is 6, 6 plus 8 is, okay, -6 times, sorry, -6 times 2, -2 is 12, 12, and then we have plus 1, 12 plus 1 is 13. Okay, what do we do next? Well, where is our pivot? That's what you have to look for. So we had a pivot in the first row, we had a pivot in the second row. Now we have to look for third row. Is there a pivot position? Yes, there is. First non-zero entry is this -2, and we want to make it a 1. So what do we do in the next step? You will multiply the third row by -1/2. So you write -1/2 R3. So what will R3 become now? 0, 0, 1, -2, -4. Okay. Now, where is the pivot? Now the pivot is over here. So what is your job now? To make the other entries in that column 0. So how will you do that? Well, you will use the third row, not the second, not the first, not the fourth. Use the third row. So multiply the third row by a certain number and then add it into whichever row you want to. And then you decide what number you have to multiply with. Is that number in the column tells you. So if I want to make this quantity a 0, then I just need to add the third row into the fourth row. And if I want to make this a 0, I have to multiply the third row by -1 and then add into here to make it a 0. So I will write the operations and then let you guys work on it. So what we will do, we'll do R3 plus R1. So it means we'll add the third row into the first row. Also we will do negative R3 plus R2, and then just R2, oh sorry, R3 plus R4. So which row is going to stay the same? The one we are using, the one which has our pivot. Remember, if you circle the pivot, then you remember. So this is the row that is going to stay the same. I will let you guys write the you know, rest of the rows by using these operations. So maybe you can just pause the video here and work on the matrix, and then when I come back, we will see if you got the same numbers that I have, and if someone made a mistake, or if there is a mistake made by me, we will discuss that in class. Okay, coming back to it, you might notice that now your matrix looks like zero, zero, and negative 1, 2, one, sorry, negative 1, 1. So it should look like the last two columns are going to be, maybe write this. So the last two columns will be negative 1 and negative 10 here. And then you have 2 and negative 2, and then negative 2 and negative 4, and then negative 1 and 9. Okay, so are we done with the pivots? Well, no, there is one more left, which is this quantity. So we are in the fourth row, and you can see this is the quantity in the fourth column. So it's going to look like our identity matrix. So I want to make this 1. How do I do that? I just multiply by negative 1. So we end up getting the matrix in the form, so just everything as it is. So I'm going negative R4. So for that, I still have to write the whole matrix again. The last step, almost there. So now the pivot has moved to this position. This is our pivot. So I have to make these two zeros. These are three numbers as zeros. What are the operations you are going to do, and what are going to the matrix look like? So when let again take a break, stop the video, work on the numbers, and then look back. Okay, I hope you guys got it. So what are the operations we are going to do? In order to make this entry a 0, I'll just add a row 4 to row 1. To make this a 0, I have to multiply the row 4 by negative 2. Add into row 2, and to make this entry as 0, I have to multiply the row the row R4 by 2 and add in there, add into R3. So what matrix we get? It will be 1 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 1, and the last column will be negative 19, 16, negative 22, and negative 9. So remember, this was the column for the b's, and then this one is the variable coefficients of these variables. So now we have to write down basically our equation. So from the first row, my equation gives me x1 is 19. From the second row, I get x2 is 16. And from third row, we get x3 is equal to negative 22. And then x4 gives us negative 9. So this is our solution, you can say. But that's what we were looking for. So you can see how long this process is. It takes up, time, and so it needs practice. So even it's just an addition and multiplications of numbers, but it takes time. So make sure that you practice enough problems to be able to do it quickly in the class or in the homeworks and quizzes and tests. Okay, so we will now look at section 1.3 in the next video.